In the hills, silent of North Texas, where the sunrises are slow and the wind barely whispers among the trees, there was a place that the neighbors they avoided mention after dark, Whitmore Canine Estate. It was a property immense, fenced as a fortress, with dozens of dogs trained to respond accurately military. But all they knew that in he last corner, apart from the rest, lived a different one, Max, a German shepherd who did not bark, but he was growling. He was not chasing, but charged. His gaze was ice and his history, almost a legend. They said that there was attacked 3 coaches. One ended up with the broken arm, the other 2 left estate. But the owner of the farm, the eccentric and lonely Mr. Whitmore, never allowed himself to be sacrificed. Some they whispered that he was crazy, others that he had a debt to that animal. No one dared to ask him directly until someone saw a photo ancient in his office, a child hugging a dog just like Max. "Me and Duke, 1965, read the caption. Then something started to fit in. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, a little girl called Maya lived in the margins of oblivion. I had 12 years, but his eyes spoke of 1,000 battles. He slept under bridges, ate whatever he found, and walked as who expects nothing from anyone. Never had a birthday, nor a bed fixed, nor not even a promise broken. All he knew was the street. But one day, while taking shelter from the heat in a bus station, he heard 2 men talking about a dog impossible to tame and $1 million offered to whoever could achieve it. I didn't understand how much was $1 million, but the tone in which they spoke woke something up in her, an instinct, a certainty. Maybe that dog and her, they spoke the same language. No that of words, but the one of abandonment. And when nobody further listened, one learns to recognize that sound in others. If this touched you, please subscribe to the channel. There are more stories worth hearing. Maya had no plan or permission, just one determination that would scare many adults. He walked for hours. He crossed roads and dry fields until, at dusk, he saw the gates black Whitmore Canine Estate. They were huge, like those of a castle, and guarded by a guard who neither he didn't even look at her when he approached. "I want to see the dog," he said bluntly. The man blurted out a short laugh and returned to his cell phone. She didn't move. After a while, he growled, "Get out, girl," without looking up. That night he slept next to the fence, hugging his dirty backpack and listening the howls far from the dogs. No one spoke to him again. The next day came back, and to the other, and to the other. Every time further dirty, more tired, but just as firm. Until the 4th day, the same guard, he pressed a button in his radio and murmured, "Sir, there is a little girl here outside. He's not leaving." And then he appeared. Mr. Whitmore walked with his back straight, but the tired face, tall, dressed in clothes, face that did not seem new, stopped forehead to that little girl, skinny, covered in dust. Maya looked into his eyes without fear. He frowned, like evaluating her. "Why you follow coming?" he asked. She shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "Because they say that nobody can handle Max." Maybe by that. I can." There was a long, awkward silence. The man didn't laugh, nor did he despise her. Simply nodded slowly and turned on his heels. "Tomorrow at dawn, if still are here, you will enter." And without further ado, he disappeared behind the fence. Maya didn't sleep that night. He stayed wake up under the moon, with your knees attached to the chest and the heart beating like a drum. I didn't know had fear or hope. Perhaps both were the same. The sun barely played her horizon when the gate opened, with a creak metallic. Maya stood up immediately, wiping her hands on the ripped pants. An assistant led her in silence along a gravel path that wound through the gardens until reaching the last one corner of the land where the others' coaches refused to approach. From far away, he saw him. Max was standing firm as a living statue, with ears upright and the gaze fixed in she. She separated him a gross chain anchored to a concrete wall. Her body was pure muscle, her expression threat. The assistant did not approach more. "This is it. Don't enter the security circle," he warned in a loud voice. Neutral. Maya breathed deep and nodded. Then, alone, she gave a few steps and sat down in the ground, a few meters from the beast. Didn't say anything. He didn't do anything. None gesture. He was just there, like if it were part of the landscape. Max growled at first, pulled on the chain, barked at Tame, strong. Maya was unfazed. She opened his backpack and took out a granola bar, your last treasure, and left her halfway between them. Then she sat back down, still, with her arms on their knees. They passed minutes as long as hours. Max walked in circles, distrustful, but he finally came over. He sniffed the bar, took it carefully, and returned to his corner. Maya smiled barely, not by he advance, but because by first time in a lot time, someone, even if it was a dog, had accepted something without taking anything away from it. Since a security camera, Whitmore watched all in silence without blinking, and for first time in years, he felt something move inside it, something that neither all his money had accomplished. Tap. The next day, Maya returned to the same place, this time with a piece of stale bread that had saved from breakfast. Max didn't growl anymore. He looked at her from his corner, without moving, but without hostility. Maya repeated the ritual: sit down, put down the food, wait, nothing else. None order, no attempt to touch him, just presence. On the third day, Max walked toward. She did not make the food, but toward his side. He stopped to scarce centimeters and sniffed it slowly, like he read his history and each corner of his clothes dirty. She didn't move, not even blinked. And then Max did the unthinkable. He lay down next to she, not in position of attack but of rest. And in that gesture, Maya understood something she had never. In other words, she could also be a home for someone. Did you get this part? Then don't go without subscribe. Here we tell stories that stir something within. That night, for first time since he arrived, he slept in a bed. Not one bed improvised, neither borrowed, but a true, mattress clean, sheets soft, a blanket that smelled of lavender. When he opened it, eyes in the morning, Max was lying down in front of the door like a guardian. Maya sat slowly, watching the sleeping animal and feeling something inside her begin to wake up too. When she went down to breakfast, she found Mr. Whitmore in the dining room. He didn't say anything immediately. He just served her a plate of eggs and toast and sat down at the front. After some minutes in silence, asked, "Why are you doing it?" Maya chewed slowly and answered without looking up, "Because he doesn't look at me." As yeah, I was worthless. And that phrase, said with a naturalness overwhelming, it was as a mirror for the old millionaire, because he also knew what it was, carry that look, a stranger who judges without knowing. From that day on, Maya and Max became inseparable. They walked together by the gravel paths, sat under the big oak tree at dusk, and even shared silences that said more than many conversations. The farm employees observed from far away, unbelievers. No one in years there were accomplished being so close to Max without suffering a bite. But Maya was not a trainer, nor adult, nor had technique some. I only had time, patience, and a tenderness silent that neither she knew he possessed. Whitmore began to follow his steps from a distance with curiosity, not only because he dogged, but for the girl. Every gesture, every choice forced him to remember things that were there buried with the passage of time, years. His childhood, the loss of Duke, and about everything, your humanity. One day, while Maya was playing with Max near the property's man-made lake, Whitmore strode over. He had an envelope in his hand sealed. "Hear this, the check," he said, handing it to her. "$1 million. Like I promised." Maya frowned, without touching it. "What for?" "What is it for?" he asked. The man blinked, puzzled. "What are you want?" She stayed in silence some seconds and then shook his head. "I don't want to. That I want stay. I want a bed, food all the days, and power go to school." Whitmore didn't know that say. For a moment, it invaded him a thick guilt. like if they had put a mirror in front of the soul. It was not buying the redemption of an animal, he thought. He was getting back something that had lost without realizing it account. He nodded with moist eyes and said, "Okay, all that will be yours." And from that moment on, Maya stopped. Being a visit on the farm, it became in part of it. The room assigned to him was at the end of the hall, just in front of Mr. Whitmore's office. It was small but cozy, with a window by where entered the morning sun and a blue quilt that smelled clean. Maya sat down in bed without knowing if was dreaming. In his previous world, sleeping indoors, it was already a luxury. Now had sheets, a closet with clothes new and a backpack with supplies, school children waiting for her on Monday. Max was sleeping each evening in front of his door, like Yer understood that now she was the part further valuable of that place. The first night, Maya couldn't close the eyes. Not by fear, but because his body, I still didn't believe I had to run away. In the front room, Whitmore watched the same 1965 photograph with Duke in arms, but this time without sadness, only with a peace new, warm. "It didn't fix it," he murmured, referring to Max. It reminded him that he never was broken. The following days were like an awakening constant. Maya attended classes in a school private close, accompanied by a driver and in a uniform that he couldn't quite believe hers. She was diligent, quiet, and somewhat surly, but the teachers, they noticed a living intelligence behind its silence. At recess, she would sit under a tree, alone, and draw. She always drew dogs. Max was waiting for her when she returned, and she was running to hug him as if I hadn't seen it in weeks. The farm employees, initially reluctant, began to see her in a different light, not as an intruder, but as a kind of miracle living. Max changed too. He no longer growled at everything that moved. Sometimes he let them pet him. It was like if Maya had opened an invisible door and also in all the others. If you felt something reading this, subscribing is the way to support more stories. So see the light. One afternoon, a group of reporters showed up at the entrance to Whitmore Canine Estate. Someone there was, "The story of the girl who tamed the dog has been leaked impossible." And the media did not take long in convert it in news. Whitmore, camera, averse, tried keep them away, but Maya convinced him to talk. Not for fame, but because such time is others like Max by there, waiting for someone to see. So, with clothes simple and low voice, gave his first interview. He did not talk about poverty nor abandonment. He just said that Max wasn't bad, he was just sad, and that when one is sad for a lot time, people forget that they still can change. That phrase, repeated on social media and TV shows, Maya became a symbol, but she didn't notice. For her, everything continued same. School, bread and butter in the morning, afternoons with Max in a garden, and a bed that already felt like his own. One of those nights, Whitmore called her to his office. "I had a box in a lap." Maya approached cautiously, not knowing what weight. "This was Duke's," he said, the man opening the lid. Inside was an old collar, a worn leash, and a stuffed animal bitten by the years. "I never knew what to do with this. It hurt just to look at it." Maya took his stuffed animal and held it in his hands. Should I give it to Max?" he asked. Whitmore nodded. That night, when Maya handed it to him, Max sniffed. His stuffed animal with a delicacy that no one waited. Then he took him to his corner and lay down about he, not like who save an object, but as who protects a memory. Silently, Maya sat at her side. They didn't need to speak. They both knew what it meant lose and find. As the months passed, Maya began to change without realizing it. His shoulders were no longer there, hunched over as before. His gaze, previously aloof, was now direct and firm. He began to speak further in class, to participate in activities, even to smile from time to time. And when the teachers, they noticed that she had a special talent for writing. One of them encouraged her to participate. in an essay contest. The theme was My Hero, and Maya wrote about Max. He didn't describe it like a dog fierce, neither as a pet, but like a mirror. Max taught me that it doesn't make lack bark to be heard, he wrote. It only makes someone is missing. To stay. His essay won the first place, and it was read in front of the whole school. Maya didn't cry, but Max, who had been taken as special guest, sat at his feet during all reading, like Ye knew that it was also his moment. Whitmore watched all with a mixture of wonder and tenderness. Never there was been a father. He never felt trained to care for to another human being. But with Maya, everything was different. There was no demands, neither contracts. Only one girl who, without asking for anything, gave him back something that he believed lost, the sense of belonging. One night, while they had dinner together, she asked him, "Did you have Dad?" He stayed in silence, surprised by the question. "I had it," he replied after a moment, "but he left when I was a child." Maya nodded slowly and said nothing more. He just continued eating, like Ye had understood something important without needing explanations. Sometimes wounds don't need words. They just need company, and that, Whitmore thought, was something Maya had taught unintentionally. One morning, while Maya was preparing his backpack to go to class, Max started barking loudly. It wasn't a bark but an urgent one, like if something wasn't right. Maya ran towards the door and found him moving restlessly, scratching at Whitmore's office door. When he opened it, he found him thrown away in the floor, fainted. Without losing time, he shouted by help and called the staff. They rushed him to the nearest hospital close. A heart attack mild, they said the doctors. There were been fast, but could have been worse. Yet nobody had stayed close. Maya did not move from her side in all the day. Sitting in a plastic chair, with Max lying at her feet, she squeezed the hand of the man who, unwittingly, had converted in his only family. When it opened the eyes, the first thing he saw was to she. "Are you okay?" she asked in a loud voice, snores. "Yes," Maya replied, "but don't scare me." So other time. After that, frightened, Whitmore began to do changes. He called his lawyers, drafted documents, closed accounts unnecessary. When Maya asked him by what, he replied, "Because if something happens to me, I want everything this in order, and why I'm not alone anymore." Since then, the Friday, they met in the estate's library and read with her. Maya learned about history, literature, and he about TikTok and singers who never there was ear name. Max lay between them, like an invisible bridge. The estate, once silent and rigid, now had laughter, small steps, and the smell of toast in the mornings. The employees grew accustomed to the new routine, and even the others' dogs, they seemed further calmed down. What began as a long shot had been turned in a home, and everyone, without saying it in voice high, they knew that the true. It was not a miracle that Maya had saved Max, but together they had saved Whitmore. At some point, Maya began to dream of things that had previously seemed like distant, study veterinary, have his own clinic, help to animals like Max. He started reading books on canine anatomy, taking notes, to do questions to the trainers and veterinarians passing by for the estate. Whitmore bought it from him, a special notebook and a microscope laptop, to get you started as scientist, he said with a smile. Maya hugged him by first time. That day, without thinking about it, it was a brief, clumsy gesture, but full of meaning. Afterwards, he sat down in the ground next to Max and told him his dream whole, like he could understand every word. And perhaps she did, because she looked at him with those old eyes that had seen everything. For her, it was no longer about escaping the pain, now wanted to build something new. And that, for a girl who had lived off the leftovers of the world, was a revolution. One Sunday in the afternoon, while they cleaned the garden together, Maya found a box buried under a fig tree. It was metallic and was rusty, but inside there were letters, photos old, and a small notebook with drawings of dogs. They were Whitmore's when he was a child. He kept it, looking, surprised. I thought he had disappeared with the time, he murmured. They sat down together under the tree and began to check he content. In one of the photos, a child smiling hugged. A dog, just like Max. Maya pointed at him. Is this Duke? She nodded. He was my best friend. Maya stared at the image for a long moment, then looked at Max, who was sleeping a few feet away. Do you think Duke came back? In him? He asked. Whitmore didn't answer. He just closed eyes and smiled, because some questions do not need answer. Just a moment of silence shared. The story of Maya and Max began to arrive further far from what Whitmore had imagined. And here, animal shelter from another, the state contacted her to invite her to speak with children in homeless people who were participating in a rehabilitation program. At first, Maya hesitated. She didn't feel an example, just someone who had been lucky. But Whitmore encouraged her. It's not what you did, it's what you do, every day. So he agreed. He went with Max, who no longer needed a leash. In the shelter, sat down in front of a group of 20 boys, some even older than her, and she told his history. He did not use big words, did not even appear as heroine. She only talked about how difficult it is to feel invisible, and how sometimes all it takes is one living being to see so that everything starts to change. When he finished, one of the boys came up and hugged Max. I had a dog too. So, he said in low voice. Maya smiled at him. She didn't, nothing else is missing. Return on the farm, Maya started to write everything experienced in a new notebook. I didn't know. Yeah, someday it would be a book, but I felt I needed to record those days before the time that came back to fuse. He wrote at night, while Max slept at her feet and the house sank in silence. Sometimes he would go down to Whitmore's office and read to him, in voice high, what there was written. I listened without interrupting, like each word would sew him a wound, ancient. You have talent, he told her, a night, not only for the animals, for people too. Maya shrugged. I don't know. Yes, I'm good in something. I only know that for first time wanna stay. And that phrase was left floating in the air, like a promise. Because when someone who has been torn from the world says he wants stay, it's because found a place where he can finally call home. Spring arrived with flowers in the gardens and new routines. Maya was no longer the little girl new. He was part of everything. At school, he started making friends. On the farm, he helped out in the training of others' dogs, always with that patience that seemed born from pain but polished by love. Max followed her everywhere sides as a faithful shadow. Even I was sleeping further calm, without shocks, without growls, nocturnes. Whitmore, by his part, had been transformed without realizing it at all. He smiled moreover. He spoke with the employees, planted a small vegetable patch behind the house, and each afternoon I read with Maya in the library. It was like if life had given him one second opportunity. But not for punishment, neither by compassion, but by merit. And although never said it, everyone they noticed that he was walking further erect since Maya arrived. One day Maya found in the kitchen a cake with a lit candle. At first, he didn't understand. What is this? He asked. Whitmore appeared from a dining room with a smile. Happy birthday, Maya frowned. He frowned. But I don't know when I was born. He shrugged. Today seems like a good day to celebrate. She stood in silence some seconds, without knowing if laugh or cry. Then he closed eyes, made a wish, and blew out the candle. Max barked a time, like approved the ceremony. It was the first time someone celebrated it. That someone, he said, you existence. It matters. That night they ate cake and watched a movie in a living room projector. Maya stayed asleep in his sofa with Max at her feet and Whitmore covering her with a blanket. It wasn't a big event, nor a balloon party, but it was perfect, because love, when it is true, does not need noise, only presence. Summer brought with him visits unexpected. One afternoon, as Maya and Max were returning from a hike by the forest, a black car stopped in front of the fence. Of the vehicle low, a woman with elegant clothes and glasses dark. He asked by the girl. It was a social worker, sent by his state after receive a complaint anonymous. I wanted verify he Maya's well-being and review his legal status. Whitmore was unperturbed. He invited the woman in, showed her the documents, school, room, the information doctors. Maya, meanwhile, watched from far away with the heart accelerated. He had fear that someone would try take away what was finally there found. But at the end of the day, the woman said goodbye with a smile genuine. It is better cared for here than in any part of the system, he said, and before he left, he patted Max on the head. Good work, kid. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. He sat down in his bed with his knees to his chest, looking at the moon through the window. Whitmore came in without making noise and sat down at his side. Do you think they're going to take me? He asked, in low voice. He firmly denied. No, not anymore. This is your house, and no one can change that. She breathed deep, like releasing an invisible burden. I had never felt so part of something. Whitmore took her hand, and for first time, he squeezed it tightly. And I never knew I needed to someone until you came along. Max, from the threshold, watched the scene with his wise eyes. He did not bark, he didn't even move. He just lay down, in the floor, and closed the eyes, because understood, more than anyone, that this family, built without blood, neither contracts, it was the most real ever there was existed. Did you follow the history up to here? It proves that it was worth it, the penalty. Subscribe, comment, or share. As the days go by, the routine returned to his channel. Maya attended classes. Max slept at her feet, and Whitmore waited for her with a snack list. Weekends were leaving the three together to walk by the trails on the farm, such as a tailor-made family. But one Monday morning, Max didn't wake up. He was lying in bed in his corner, favorite eye with the snout about he old Duke's stuffed animal. Maya named him once, turned him twice, but he didn't answer. Whitmore arrived shortly after and, seeing the scene, understood without words. Max had gone in peace, without suffering, after having complemented his purpose. Maya knelt down at his side, caressed his fur tenderly, and rested his forehead about his back, motionless. He did not cry at that moment. He just whispered to her, "Thank you for stay. Thanks for wait for me." And in that silent farewell, he knew that Max always would live in she. They buried him under the big oak tree, where they used to feel together. They put a plate simple, Max, the dog that wasn't impossible. They came the employees, some neighbors, and even schoolmates. Everyone wanted to say goodbye to the animal that had changed a life, and perhaps many more. Maya passed weeks in silence, writing everything there was lived with him. Those writings, with the time, they became in a small book he published with Whitmore's help. For those who they have been broken and still so continue loving, the dedication read. Max and Maya's story was no longer a secret. It became in a light for others, a proof that love, even he most unlikely, may save us, and that sometimes all a lost soul needs to be seen, even if it's just once. Years afterwards, Maya became in veterinary, opened a small clinic on the edge of town with a waiting room, decorated with children's drawings and a huge mural with the image of Max under the oak tree. Each dog that attended to him spoke to him with the same patience that one once offered it to him. In each look fearful, I saw something familiar, and every person I crossed his door offered them more than a service. It offered them understanding. Whitmore, now older, continued visiting her each week, sometimes with a basket of bread, other times with books old people under the arm. He never called her daughter, but all they knew that it was what it really was. It matters. They shared silences, lukewarm coffees, and wordless memories. There were built a family from the wound, one where nobody I had to pretending to be strong to deserve love. In an interview for a local magazine, Maya was asked by his secret, how you get even the dogs, further aggressive ones, calm down with you. She smiled, thought for a moment and replied, "I don't try control them. I just sit with them until they stop having fear." That phrase went viral. Like years it was back then, his history with Max. But she wasn't looking for fame. I just wanted no one felt invisible, because what Max taught her, and then she taught the world, was that even the hearts more broken can beat again. Yeah, someone stays, if someone listen, if someone go. And in that seeing, in that staying, lies the guy further powerful love. He who does not demand, does not impose, does not hurt. He only transforms forever. If you ever felt invisible, this story, it was for you. Subscribe and join us. There are more hearts waiting to be seen.